So in the last video we have discussed about the bottom navigation and the drawers. So I think navigation part is completely done. So let's move forward. In the last video I've told you about, I will explain the stateful and stateless widget, right? So you have so many doubts about what is this stateful widget and what is this stateless widget, right? There's two types of widget mainly, so we will be treating with them. So so in the simple way, stateless and stateful widget, as the name suggests, you can just by the name you can see that it's a stateless widget and it's a stateful widget, right? So from the name you can understand that it's stateless, right? It means it doesn't have a state. And in the stateful widget, like if we have an example, it is stateful widget, so thus it has a state. So if you see the stateful widget syntax, you will see a state of a screen one page. So that means a stateful widget contains a state, right? But unless the stateless widget, which doesn't have any state. So you can identify this by just the names or by the syntax. So now you have a question, okay, what is the state, right? So in Flutter, state is nothing but just in the simple terms, it's a data, right? So it's data. So whatever the content, whatever the data we are representing on the screens are referred to as a state. And if it changes, the state changes, right? So in the stateful widget, it tracks the change in states, but in the stateless widget, the state is fixed, right? So once you assign the state, it remains there. But in the stateful widget, it can change and it can alter, right? So this is a state, right? This is a profile. This has a state, which is a profile. It's a static state. But in the screen one, as you can see, we have variables, right? And we have functions and we have things which are changing as the selected index is changing, right? So that's why we use the stateful widget. So to explain it further, let's remove all this and just create a simple widget. So you can write a stateless widget by just pressing STL, and you can build stateful and stateless widget. So as I told you, just a second, demo stateless widget. It's just a stateless widget, directly doesn't have any state. You can create here static UIs and basic widgets or any structure which doesn't require change in state. You can build with this. But if you want to let's have an example, and let's create a simple increment, right? Incremental app. So for that, let's create a simple incremental app. So for that, first we have to create, let's make another page, right? Increment, right? Let's create a stateful widget, and as you can see, we have our stateful widget ready. So if I just name it increment widget, increment page, right? Okay, yeah. So now you can see we have a state and everything is completely done. So that's our syntax for the stateless widget. You can also convert any stateless widget to a stateful widget by just this. Let's make an edit, and if I just change do the control dot on it, and I can just convert it to stateful widget. So now you have a stateful widget, right? So during the process of creating any widget, if you feel like it will have a state change, then you can convert it into the stateful widget, right? So let's move forward. Let's create a scaffold, then create a body, right? Then add a column in it, then we can add a children's. So this is our basic, yes, and I can just go with the main file and change it to the increment page, given the directory, and we are ready. So now you can see we have a blank white screen. After that, we can add element into it. So in any app you create in the future or right now, there are three basic things, three required and important things you must have in app. First one are variables, then you have what we call as methods or functions, right? Then finally we have the UI interface, okay? UI, or which is user interface, right? So this is the UI interface part. So whatever you build will be considered the UI. Variable in our case in an incremental app is int count. Let's create a personal variable and counter 0, right? And in the method, we can create any method. Right now we are making an incremental app, so we'll just go with the void increment, what we counter, right? and just create a method around it. And in this we can create the counter plus plus this. So by this we are incrementing our counter. So let's move forward. Let's create a little bit of UI into this. So just add a text and just you pushed the button this many times, as we are counting the steps, right? After this we can add again a text, because we have to add a counter. Then we have the counter to string, as it is an integer, right? What is string? Constant. We have to remove the constant because it's a variable, as I told you. Then we will just add a style into this, text style, and create the font big, right? So you can just see it much better. So now you can see we have both the things. Just with that we will just main axis alignment center, so it goes to the center. Also cross axis alignment center, like you can create, make it to the center in any way possible. So right now we have a column, so just wrap it with the So now you can see we have in the center. Then we will just simply put to the elevated button. We create an on press in this. On press we will just call a function. So let's remove everything this bracket has, and we just call this method we have built in the past, right? After that, in the child we will just a text and add the value as increment, right? Boom, we have this, add a comma, and we have our app built, right? So now you can see we have our incremental app, but now you will notice that it's not changing. Why will be the case, right? What will be the case? As I told you, it's all about state. So this is a state, and this is like it's a state, but it is not like it's changing, but the UI is not rebuilding for that. And that's the only, like, the main use case of a state management or a stateful widget, that we can use a change in state. So set state, so anytime this counter is called or this function is called, we rebuild our state, right? And this is only used in stateful widget, because in stateless widget there is no states, so you can't use it, right? So just now you will see that as we incremented but now you will say ki why it is not like showing in the last example. But if I show you, it is changing in that case, but it is not representing in the UI. So now you will notice it. As you can see in the debug console, we can see the number is increasing, but the UI is not changing at all. So as soon as we add the set state, this current state will change as we call this function. So the change in state refers to the change in UI. So now it's clear. So anytime you have to change anything in the UI, usually we will use the stateful widget. Except for that, stateless widgets are very importantly useful for creating widgets and the UI parts and elements, background, screens, app bars, and that stuff. So that's it for it. After this video, I think you will be cleared about both the stateful and stateless widgets. Also, the stateful widget are a little lengthier and more heavy on the render tree. It's just an advanced topic. We will discuss in further videos. And the stateless widget are a little less heavy on the render tree, and compressed and very good to use. So try to do not use stateful widget unless you really need it. Try to go with the stateless widget as much as possible. So my normal approach is always just start with the stateless widget. Unless I know it requires a stateful widget, I will start with the stateless widget and just name it. And as soon as I think now I need to add a variable, I have to think counter in it. I have to make a counter in it, right? So then I will go and change it to stateful widget. So then and only then use the stateful widget. It will be more good for your apps in the further, as you are going to be a senior Flutter developer in future and make an awesome apps. So that's it. Have a nice day. I am low on battery, so thank you. Have a nice day. Bye.